I worked 2 jobs to fund my sister's life, but she called me a loser. I cut her off, and she spiraled. Now she's stuck, while I moved on. When my younger sister, Fiona, was accepted to her chosen college, the entire family celebrated as if it were the greatest success of all time. My parents were beaming with delight, and Fiona was already discussing her future career plans. Meanwhile, I stood in the corner, quietly calculating how everything was going to turn out. My parents did not have enough money to pay for her schooling. They made this evident when they began dropping hints during family chats. Fiona is so smart, but college is so expensive these days, my mother would add, as if I didn't realize where this was headed. I did not have much. I was working as a mechanic and saving money for a house, but Fiona was my sister. I wondered, what's the harm in helping? So I pitched in. It began with simple purchases, textbooks, and groceries, but it quickly escalated. I soon began paying her rent, electricity, and even nights out when she wanted to. She always had an explanation when she asked for money. I'll pay you back when I graduate. Or, Mom and Dad just can't help right now. What made matters worse was that my parents treated me as if I was required to assist. Family takes care of family, they'd say, as if I wasn't already straining my back, working 2 jobs to support them. Fiona, meanwhile, pretended that the world revolved around her. She'd share images of expensive dinners and weekend getaways, beaming as if she wasn't living on my dime. I kept telling myself it was only temporary. I felt it would all be worthwhile after she graduated, but deep down, I was beginning to resent the idea that my life was on wait while hers was racing full speed ahead, and I was footing the price. I believed things would improve once Fiona got into her college schedule. I imagined she'd recognize how much I was doing for her and express her gratitude. However, her entitlement only increased. Her spending habits were the first clear clue. While I was skipping meals and working late nights to pay her rent, Fiona was displaying her new clothing on social media, designer purses, trendy shoes, and elegant dinners that I could never buy for myself. At first, I attempted to rationalize. Perhaps she has a part-time job. Perhaps she was simply overdoing it for looks, but when I approached her about it, she simply shrugged it off. Everyone at school dresses like that, she told me. I don't want to look like I don't fit in. It wasn't just her attitude toward money. It was everything. She treated me like a walking ATM, never asking how I was or if I any assistance. My folks were not any better. Every time I tried to express how much I was struggling, they'd guilt me into being silent. She's your sister, my mother would explain. She's building a future. You should be proud to help her. But it wasn't just helping, it was sacrificing. My weekends were gone, as were my money, and that house I had always wanted? Forget it. Meanwhile, Fiona couldn't be bothered to write a thank you card. Instead, she contacted to complain about her teachers, her homework, or her flatmates. She never inquired how I managed to work 2 jobs simply to keep her afloat. The resentment I'd suppressed began to rise. I was weary of being treated as if my life didn't matter, as long as hers was progressing. The tipping point came when Fiona casually stated that she was considering studying abroad for a semester. She didn't even question if I could afford it. She simply assumed I could handle it. I think it would be such a great experience, she added over the phone, her voice light and carefree. The program costs a little more, but it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, right? I sat there, grasping the phone and trying to understand what she had just said. I could barely cover her usual expenditures, and now she wants me to pay for a semester abroad? When I brought it up with my parents, expecting they would finally see sense, they doubled down. This is an incredible opportunity, my mother stated. You'll figure it out. You always do. I was floored. No one acknowledged how hard I worked. There is no care for my welfare, just the expectation that I would continue to sacrifice because, obviously, that was my position in the family. At the same time, Fiona's actions became impossible to ignore. She'd phoned to whine about the most minor things, like how her roommate had borrowed her shoes or how the campus cafeteria didn't have real lattes. She also started making subtle barbs at me. She'd laugh at how I was always working and say I was married to my job. She doesn't appreciate you, a coworker said one night while I was complaining during a break. You bend over backward, and she acts like you owe her. For the first time, I began to question whether they were correct. Family dinner was intended to be an informal gathering. My parents invited me over to catch up, and Fiona had returned to town for a break from school. I didn't want to go, but I believed I could handle a few hours. When I arrived, the situation was already tight. My parents were hovering over Fiona, inquiring about her classes, social life, and whether she needed anything else for school. I sat silently, hoping for someone to ask how I was doing. But of course, that never occurred. Fiona brought up the study abroad opportunity again at dinner. She raved about how great it would be and how everyone she knew was doing it. Then she looked directly at me and said, "I hope you're ready for a little extra work, big brother. These programs don't come cheap." I froze. I could not believe she had the nerve to say it in front of everyone, as if it were a done thing. "Maybe you should get a part-time job," I suggested, attempting to keep my tone light. Fiona laughed. "Me, a part-time job? That's funny. I'm too busy with school." That was it, the final straw. I sat down my fork and glanced at her. "You're joking, right? You think I'm just going to keep funding your lifestyle forever while you sit around doing nothing?" The room went silent. My folks looked at me as if I'd swore at the dinner table. Fiona's jaw dropped, but she soon recovered. "What's your problem?" she demanded. "You've always been so bitter. Just because your life isn't going anywhere doesn't mean you have to take it out on me." That hit me like a punch to the belly. After everything I had done for her, sacrificing my time, money, and goals, was this how she saw me, a failure? Her words hung in the air like a smack to the face. I could feel my blood boiling, but I was not going to give her the last word. "Bitter?" I asked, leaning forward. "You think I'm bitter because my life isn't going anywhere?" "Fiona, my life isn't going anywhere because I was too busy funding yours." My parents quickly sprang to her defense. "That's inappropriate," my mother responded, her tone stern. "You're her brother. It's your job to support her." "My job," I repeated with a sour laugh. When did it become my job to work 2 jobs so she could live in luxury? When did it become my job to sacrifice my entire future so she could have hers handed to her on a silver platter? Fiona crossed her arms and rolled her eyes. "Oh, there it is," she mumbled. "The martyr routine. That was it. I was finished." "You know what?" I asked, rising up. "Go ahead and call me a failure, Fiona, but at least I worked for everything I have. What have you done?" "Nothing. You sit around spending my money while pretending you're better than me." I turned to my parents. "And you two are no better. You've enabled her selfishness at every turn, and I'm done playing along. I'm not paying for anything anymore. Not her rent, not her tuition, nothing." The silence was terrible. Fiona's face turned pale, and for the first time, she appeared genuinely shocked. "You can't do this," she exclaimed, her voice cracking. "How am I supposed to live?" "Figure it out," I remarked as I grabbed my jacket. "I've been doing it for years. Maybe it's time for you to learn." I left the dinner feeling angry and relieved. For the first time, I stood up for myself, but I knew the consequences were coming. It didn't take very long. The next morning, my phone was inundated with texts and calls. Fiona came first. She began sending passive-aggressive messages. "Thanks for ruining dinner. Hope you feel good about leaving your own sister out to dry." When I did not answer, the guilt trip started. "You're really going to leave me like this, after all I've been through?" I disregarded all messages. If she wanted to play the victim, she could do so without me. Then my parents became involved. My mother called first, her voice oozing with displeasure. "I don't know what's gotten into you," she told me. "Fiona needs your help. She's your sister. She's been my financial responsibility for years." I replied. "It's time for her to grow up and take care of herself." My father wasn't much better. He called later in the day. "You're being selfish. You're punishing her for no reason. What's she going to do now? Get a job?" I stated bluntly, like the rest of us. The true kicker came later that week when I received a call from Fiona's landlord. Apparently, she had informed him that I was the one who paid her rent. When the payment did not go through, he came directly to me. "She's not my problem anymore," I informed him. "You need to talk to her." Fiona must have taken that chat as a wake-up call, since a few days later, she showed up unannounced at my flat. She appeared unkempt and scared, a far cry from the confident, entitled lady I was accustomed to seeing. "You can't just cut me off," she exclaimed as I opened the door. "Yes, I can," I answered, leaning against the door frame. Fiona stood there, moving her feet like a child caught in a lie. She was not used to hearing no from me or anyone else. "You don't understand," she said, her voice increasing in desperation. "If you don't help me, I'm going to lose my apartment. I can't just move back home. Mom and Dad don't have room for me." "Not my problem," I replied firmly. Her jaw fell. "Not your problem? You're my brother. And for years, I've been more than that," I said, stepping forward. "I've been your safety net, your bank, Your excuse to avoid growing up. I worked 2 jobs so you could live your dream, and the one time I asked for respect, you called me a failure. So no, Fiona, it's not my problem anymore. She blinked, as if unable to comprehend what she was hearing. I didn't mean it like that, she mumbled. I was upset, and I just wasn't thinking. You never think, I said back. You never think of anyone but yourself. You used me. You used Mom and Dad. And now you're panicking because you finally have to face the consequences. Then she started crying, big theatrical sobs. They may have worked on someone else, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. You're not going to guilt me into changing my mind, I told you. You need to figure this out for yourself. Get a job, budget your money, do whatever it takes, but leave me out of it. She didn't like the answer. You're being cruel, she said, wiping away tears. You're supposed to help the family. That's what family does. No, I replied, my voice firm. Family supports each other. They don't take advantage of each other and call it love. And until you figure that out, don't bother coming back here. I shut the door, interrupting whatever apology she was about to give. For the first time, I felt like I had power over my life. After closing the door on Fiona, I braced myself for the consequences. She was not the sort to suffer in silence, and I knew she'd attempt to make this into a sob story for our parents. They called me the next day, enraged. Mom began with her typical guilt trip. How could you do this to your sister? She insisted. She's struggling, and you left her when she needed you the most. I did not hold back. Struggling? I scoffed. She's been living off my paycheck for years while acting like she's the queen of the world. Maybe it's time she learned what struggling actually looks like. Dad spoke up next, accusing me of being callous and ungrateful for everything they had done for me. This part had me laughing. Ungrateful? I asked. You're kidding, right? I've been funding Fiona's lifestyle while you two sat back and cheered her on like she was the next big thing. Meanwhile, I've been working my ass off just to keep her comfortable. The more I laid it out, the more relaxed they were. By the end of the call, they had nothing to say but that I was tearing the family apart. Fiona's reaction was stunning. She bombarded her social media with vague remarks about how some people only care about themselves and the agony of being let down by those closest to you. She even had the guts to set up a GoFundMe page for her rent, claiming she was blindsided by an unexpected expense. Her buddies expressed phony concern, wondering if there was anything they could do to help. However, donations came in very slowly. Apparently, people weren't as enthusiastic about her lifestyle as she had planned. Meanwhile, word of the drama circulated rapidly throughout the family. My aunt called to report that she had heard I was being unreasonable. However, as I described the circumstances, she rapidly changed her tune. She really expected you to keep paying her rent? She questioned, shocked. Welcome to my world, I responded. After my parents arrived at my door, I realized how far this scenario had progressed. Fiona's entitlement was no longer the only issue. The entire family was enabling her, treating her problems as if they were mine to fix. They did not stop with guilt. My mother began to disseminate the story that I had failed Fiona and the family. Suddenly, cousins and relatives I hadn't spoken to in years started responding with messages like, "It's not fair to let her struggle," or "Family comes first." Fiona's mask of control, however, began to erode with time. I found out from common friends that she had moved back in with my parents after getting evicted. Of course, that wasn't sufficient for her. She made it apparent that she expected to be coddled there as well. One acquaintance informed me that she had overheard Fiona moaning about the food at home. She's mad that her parents don't cook her real meals, my friend added, chuckling. She even joked that they should hire someone to take care of her since you're not around to do it anymore. Hearing this only strengthened my determination to terminate ties. If my family wanted to encourage her behavior, it was their decision, but I wasn't going to keep exhausting myself for someone who couldn't even express fundamental gratitude. Fiona's downward spiral continued. She moved back home with my parents, who treated her like a helpless kid. They catered to her every desire, spending what little funds they had left to support her lifestyle. Meanwhile, they continued to blame me for her condition, as if I had committed some awful crime by cutting her off. I learned from family that Fiona was still spreading lies about me, telling anyone who would listen that I had abandoned her during a tough period. She cleverly left out the bit where she had been leeching off me for years, flaunting her status as if it were her birthright. Her demand, however, was not just financial but also social. Word of her GoFundMe fraud spread, and the same people who used to accompany her for lavish dinners now avoid her calls. Without me picking up the tab, She had nothing to give them. My parents called me in a panic, and that was the turning moment. Fiona apparently ran up credit card debt in their name, exceeding the limit to fund a shopping spree. They begged me for help, stating they couldn't make the payments on their own. I couldn't help laughing. After defending, aiding, and vilifying me, they had the arrogance to crawl back. "This is your mess to clean up," I informed them forcefully. "You chose to support her, you chose to ignore her behavior, and now you're dealing with the consequences." For once, they did not dispute. Perhaps they recognized that I wasn't going to swoop in and save her like I had done so many times before. That was the last I heard from both of them. I moved on with my life, focused on my future instead of being weighed down by their incessant turmoil. It took years to mend the harm they had caused, but I emerged stronger for it. Fiona, the last I heard, was still living with my parents, trapped in the same loop of entitlement and excuses. Part of me felt terrible for them, bound by their selfishness, but mostly I was relieved. They'd made their bed, now they could lie in it. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.